of Whāanana Efeso Collins. I call on the Green Party of Aotearoa to open that debate. First speaker is the Honourable Marama Davidson.
Tēnā koe I te māngai, tēnā tātou I te whare. I'd like to begin my speech with acknowledgements to the whānau, to Wasafia Collins and her sister Jodie, who I've spent some time with you over this last weekend, and all of your family and friends who are here. To Mama Lotomau Collins, Fess's sisters, you're also here, including from Australia, and your wider Collins whānau and community. I also would like to pay acknowledgements to the Orako iwi, who are here today to have their settlement heard, and another reminder of how important it was for Whaanana Efeso Collins to honour te tiriti. It matters to this House greatly that you are all here as this Parliament stands with humility to attempt to recognise your husband, your son, your brother, your deeply beloved family member and friend, your inspiration. I want to start my tribute with the words of Wasafia Collins, Whaanana Efeso Collins' wife. It was at the enormous public funeral service held in Manukau that Fia staunchly and correctly proclaimed that Fess was indeed bigger than any political party or movement. The Green Party knew and loved that about him the most. He was focused on being a pallbearer of neoliberalism. That vision of an Aotearoa where everyone, including the square pegs, the misfits, the forgotten, the unloved, the invisible, were cared for. An Aotearoa where our living systems, our natural wildlife, our whakapapa and generations of mokopuna are cared for, not just today, but for the many, many generations to come. That vision of an Aotearoa, his kaupapa, is always bigger than any political party. He had a job to do, and he deserved the platform to do it. And the Green Party are deeply honoured in a way that we will never truly be able to fully give words, to give justice, that it was the Green Party who were able to give him that platform, because it was about the kaupapa. Ngā mihi nui kia koe e te tungane, kia koe Whaanana Efeso Collins. The baton, as Fia also rightly proclaimed at his funeral service, is now firmly in all of our hands. Many of his attributes were spoken about at the public funeral service and over the weeks after Efeso died. It was widely recognised that he had a particular passion, commitment and aroha for upholding rangatahi, for understanding the strength that we all can learn when we are working with and understanding what they bring to the work to actually support rangatahi, especially the misfits, especially the square pegs, especially those forgotten and those unloved. And that baton is one that we all here in the House should be holding with pride and determination. And I thank Whaanana for the opportunity to highlight his kaupapa once again here today. It was a big deal for Fia and for Efeso's family to share him with us and with the world. And they were never under any pretense that that was what happens when you are married to and when you have given birth to a leader and someone who will serve, and literally to his dying day. I wanted to acknowledge also today my colleagues, my Green MP colleagues, many of whom had the privilege of just getting to know Efeso over the recent years and over the recent months, especially since he was elected and came in with a whole lot of other new MPs. Tiano and I have talked about the privilege of having known Efeso for decades, right back to when we were at Auckland University together. But everyone in this house needs to know that he had an impact on his newer friends as well. Our friends and my colleagues here who only got to know him more recently are still devastated to this day and feeling rightly ripped off by what was to come from him, by what was on promise. And I had the incredible opportunity to offer my thoughts on his contribution at the big public service in Manukau. And there are not words that I can express for how grateful I am for being given that honour that day. In among our caucus, it became quickly widely known that Efeso was going to be one of the leaders of our tall caucus. And Fia spoke to that a little bit at her speech, where she talked about him constantly trying to humble himself, constantly trying to go to the back, constantly trying to not be in the front. That was his constant humility at all times. And yet, he was the biggest, smiling, warmest, cuddly, and most welcoming giant we could have imagined. The beauty of the girls standing with Fia that day at the funeral service is something that we will never, ever forget. And Fia, that day, I know you talked about being an ordinary woman who married an extraordinary man, but your leadership, your grace, your humility, and your strength have been nothing but extraordinary. I haven't had a chance to speak publicly to your speech and to that day since then, and I am taking this moment to do that. In these moments, I really also wanted to thank the broader members and the wider members of this entire house. We received love and warm wishes, and your speeches in the aftermath, the very immediate and quite painful and shocking aftermath that very day that he died. The ongoing love and support that we have received from across the house is something that I wish we saw more of, and is something that Efeso inspired us to do more of, to work together and build genuine bridges. We also saw incredible generosity. I want to thank you directly, Mr. Speaker, Right Honourable Jerry Brownlee, your staff, your Raphael, David, I think Tim, Dwayne, Roz and the travel team. They all went very quickly above and beyond what any staff should ever have to do and should ever have to contend with. They were dealing with an entire Green Caucus in deep shock and trauma and did what they could to move mountains. Mr. Speaker, I know you are very proud of your team across the House, and we cannot thank you enough for what you also had to do. That humanity across the House is probably what I did want to focus on in my contribution today. We saw shared grief because he had an impact on all of us, not just the Green Party, not just his Labour colleagues who he has worked with for years and years. We shared moments of actually just remembering who we are as humans, that the loss for his girls, for his wife, for his mama, for his sisters, for his community was a human loss that we could understand. I wish it didn't have to take such tragic circumstances for us to be able to share human moments together. I think there's far more commonality to those humanity moments, and I think Efeso was a shining example for us to come together on those very moments. I have just seen that my time is running out here today. There are a few more acknowledgements that I wanted to talk about. I do want to acknowledge that sadly and tragically, this is not the first time the Green Party have lost a beloved MP in service. And that day and this day, I really have been thinking about Rod Donald and his family, his entire family, especially his girls and Holly, who reached out to us during that time. And this is not something that any political party should want to go through, but it's pretty heinous and we are going through it again. I want to thank everyone for your love and appreciate the time that has been given today for all of our tributes. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Not
Honourable
quite.
Shane Reti.
We're not in the Pacific just now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the National Party, New Zealand First and the Coalition Government, and as the Minister for Pacific Peoples, it is a privilege to be able to speak today and to offer thanks. It has been 2 months since the sudden passing of Whaanana Efeso Collins, and the void he left is still deeply felt here in Parliament and across the country, particularly in his hometown of Waiata in South Auckland. Today we take time out of the business of the day to pay tribute to a remarkable man who dedicated his life to serving New Zealand with kindness, compassion, integrity and dedication. Whaanana Efeso was not just a politician. Of Samoan and Tokelauan descent, he was a proud son of the Pacific, a community leader, a father, a husband and a strong advocate for justice, fairness and equal opportunity. These are all values that are echoed across this House, no matter which side of the aisle we sit on. His absence is felt here in Parliament. Whaanana Efeso dedicated his life to serving the public and making a difference for his communities. For this, I know that he was held in the deepest respect by members from across all political parties. Whaanana Efeso was very much a man of the people. He dedicated himself to tackling issues that he was passionate about, and the waves he made were felt by Pacific peoples not only in New Zealand, but also across the Pacific region. He proudly held the Samoan chiefly title of Whaanana from the village of Satufia on Savaii. His political career began in local politics in 2013 when he was elected as chairperson of the Otara Papatoetoe local board. In 2016, he then became a councillor for the Manukau ward. During his 3 terms at Auckland Council, Whaanana Efeso spoke up on issues that Pacific communities were facing. After being one of the leading contenders for Auckland's mayoralty in 2022, he most recently joined the Green Party and was elected to Parliament during the 2023 election. In his maiden speech to Parliament, which he delivered only a week before his tragic death, he reminisced about his humble beginnings, growing up in Otara, where his father worked as a taxi driver and his mother worked in a factory. We greet the family here today and acknowledge your loss. Efeso spoke about how his achievements were the results of the sacrifices his family made for him and a system that looked to assist those less fortunate in life. In his maiden speech, he spoke about coming to Parliament to help, saying that helping was a deliberate act. He told us all that he was here to help this House create a better New Zealand for all its people, to open doors that may otherwise be shut to our communities and help New Zealanders to connect with their government. Whaanana Efeso spoke about his hope to inspire the square pegs, the misfits, the forgotten, the unloved and the invisible during his time in Parliament. Speaking to the values, advocacy and leadership he will always be remembered for, he added, quote, "It is the dreamers who want more, who expect more, who are impatient for change and have this uncanny ability to stretch us further," unquote. Whaanana Efeso's passing felt like a sudden stop to a political career that was just starting to gain momentum. He, as an individual, had already made an impact for the people which he served. As the Prime Minister said, we have no doubt that he would have been very successful and very good for this Parliament in this place. My personal interactions with Efeso were few but meaningful. Most days when I left the chamber, I would catch his eye to the side and we would smile together. That was it. But in that shared moment, we were both saying, "I see you, my Polynesian brother." And that was enough for us. Whaanana Efeso had an unwavering belief in the potential of Pacific communities, particularly Pacific young peoples, and what they could achieve with the right attitude and support. This is a belief that I also hold and will seek to honour as the Minister for Pacific Peoples. Whaanana Efeso used his own experience of being the first in his family to attend and graduate from university with a master's degree in education to resonate and positively influence youth in the community. Mr. Speaker, we all grieve his loss. not just for the man he was, but the man that he was going to be. He was unapologetic and proud, and he represented the dreams and aspirations of his ancestors with wisdom and kindness. Although his full potential will never be known, he is an inspiration for what our Pacific young people have the potential to become. Despite leaving us too soon, Whaanane Efeso lives on through his wife and children, the Pacific youth who he held close to his heart, and in the communities he dedicated his life to advocating for. The thoughts of this coalition government remain with his wife Wasafia and their 2 children, extended families, communities he advocated for, and our Green Party and Pacifica parliamentary colleagues. While we have lost a pillar of the Pacific community in New Zealand, he has left behind a legacy that will continue to inspire us all to do better for each other. His impact extended far beyond the walls of his office, leaving a significant mark on the hearts and minds of all who had the privilege of knowing him. I was privileged to join family and friends in a more intimate farewell at the funeral home, and then joined the Prime Minister and a crowd of more than 2,000 as we gathered in Manukau to farewell him. This was a touching moment of reflection. Efeso, whaiwhitai lava. For all you have accomplished, for all our communities, we say thank you, moi mai, moi mai, moi mai rā.
This is a split call. Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to begin by acknowledging Fia, the Collins family, and all those who will be feeling still now acutely the loss of Whaanana Efeso Collins. There are no words that we can express in this House to adequately describe the aroha that we send your way, or that would in any way compensate for the sense of loss that you will still be feeling. I want to acknowledge my colleagues in the Green Party for the loss that you have sustained. And I want to acknowledge my Labour whānau, particularly those in Auckland who worked so closely with Efeso over such a long period of time. As my colleague from the Greens, Tiano, described the day after Efeso passed away, he was a son of the Labour Party who wandered over to the Green Party, and we all feel his loss very much. But my good friend Carmel Sepoloni also noted that he had simply moved to the whale next door. And so we grieve with you, and we feel this loss as well. I wanted to use 1 or 2 quotes from Efeso Collins himself in remembering him. And in particular, just before Christmas, he was asked by Radio New Zealand what he wanted for Christmas. And he said, "My hope for the community is that we as a nation settle on some basics. That every child will wake up and know that they've got 3 meals a day, and that they've got somewhere safe and warm to sleep at night." I know that that is what he dedicated his life to. That very much speaks to the values of Efeso, the values of the Green Party, and the values that we all share. And I know that those are values that he lived his life by. I also noted in his maiden statement, he made the statement, "No one stands alone, no one succeeds alone," and for him it was important that no one should suffer alone. Again, this was a sentiment that he not only expressed in this House, but that he gave life to in his actions. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe that we should only be reflecting on the loss that we have sustained and the potential that we may have seen in this House, because Efeso Collins, in his life before entering Parliament, had already done so much in the community and supported so many people. His life was a full one. He was a community builder, Samoan born, Otara raised, 3 terms on the Auckland Council, a passionate advocate for his communities. Before politics, a lecturer in teacher education, he consulted in leadership and cross-cultural communication. He published research in youth gangs and developed youth mentoring programs. He was the first in his family to attend and graduate from university, and he had a master's degree in education. Mr. Speaker, my first interaction with Efeso Collins was as a Students' Association representative back in 1999 when he was the newly elected president of the Auckland University Students' Association. I was attending one of my early meetings in student politics at that time. There was some conflict involved, Some great future parliamentary heavyweights were knocking about student politics at the time, including Penny Henare, Erica Stanford, me, and of course, Efeso Collins. It was a tense meeting, but I saw firsthand then what I saw many other times, Efeso's belief in being the last to speak. Because through a very tense conversation where lots of people were criticising each other, he sat and listened, and at the end of the meeting he was the last to speak, and he broke all of the tension and brought everybody together, because that was his style. It was what he believed in. He believed that you could have a disagreement, but that you could still bring people together at the end of it, and he exemplified that in all of his actions. Mr. Speaker, we will miss Efeso Collins, but in our grieving for him, we also want to always remember the enormous contribution that he made throughout his life.
The Honourable Barbara Evans.
Au te whaatalo whaatu ma le whaalo alo ma lo le soifua maua ma le langi e mama. E mamoli atu la u whawhitai le whalitua ia vasa fia. Ma le whānā Gabriela ma asalemo. A inga ma o. E whai au uma sui e le vaenga Pasifika. Mo lene awanoa. E whai sina upu ia whanana Efeso Collins. Mr. Speaker, when we as members of Parliament come to this House, we come holding the voices of many and carry the responsibility to make decisions for future generations. When we come as Pacific members of Parliament, we come holding the voices of our nu'u, our villages, and our ancestors who travelled the Pacific Ocean. And today we honour, as Carlo Miller has eloquently stated, Whaanana Efeso Collins, the ancestor we always knew he was. Mr. Speaker, my earliest account of being in the presence of Whanana Efeso, or Fez as we knew him, was at that same hui at the University of Auckland in the marae. As a member of the Auckland University Pasifika Students Association, we were called to a meeting at the marae to help carry a vote, actually against the Māori Student Association. So I trotted along to hear a lineup of speakers, first with the Māori speakers advocating for the vote. I had no idea who these guys were. Penny Henare, Shannon Halbert and Tamati Coffee. But from the back of the room, in the quiet, came the final speaker, Efeso. I've come to learn that the strategic tactic of Efeso being the last and strong and powerful voice was enough to sway the vote towards our side. If you ever wondered who was Tuakana and Taina, that hui was very clear. He was formidable in his oratory and persuasiveness. And I left that hui with an immense respect for him. To say he was the man on campus undersells his skills and his mana. I then officially met Fez one-to-one when we were introduced through a close mutual friend, Asalika Ahalalei, who was working with Efeso on one of the many projects that Efeso became involved with over the years to empower youth, the Dream Whono. Fez's passion to ensure that Pacific youth, especially youth from South Auckland, had pathways to better education and lives will be one of his enduring legacies. He knew the importance of bringing people up, no matter their backgrounds, but more importantly, he made space for others when it was clear his work was done. So today I want to share with the House the voice of some of those who Efeso was pivotal in providing space for. The voice of Lotu Willie, a long-time friend of Efeso who succeeded him as the Manukau ward councillor when Efeso stepped down off the seat. Lotu cannot be here today, but she wanted to ensure her lofa was shared today. The voice of Asalika and Leo Ahalalei, who wanted to thank Efeso for giving them the courage each day to stand up for what is right and to love and serve with a grateful heart, for bringing the lift down to bless others with opportunities within their communities. They will never forget his love and sacrifice. And finally, the voice of one of our Pasifika youth, Marama Whangaiawa, who was with Efeso on the day he passed. Maz says, I'm surrounded by fierce dreamers, staunch tusitala, glass ceiling breakers, me and my generation drink freely because of Fez. I was once asked to perform a launga or a speech to a crowd of esteemed dignitaries, iwi, community leaders and diplomats. Fez, standing from the back of the crowd, gave me a look as to say, "You've got this." We're led to think leadership is a balangi man in front of the room, suit wearing and number crunching. I know that leadership is actually standing at the back of the room, guiding from a distance, and he wears an ulafala with a look of pride, so as to say, "You've got this." So today, Vasafia, Gabriela, Asalemu, Ainga Mawo, and to our green whānau, I say, we've got you. Together, we will continue the work of our brother, our ancestor. We miss and love you, Fez. Ia manuia lau malanga whaana nā Efeso Collins. Back to Hawaii ki nui, Hawaii ki roa, Hawaii ki pāmamau. Back to the home of our ancestors.
Mr. Speaker.
Call on Simon Court.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with a heavy heart that I stand here today to acknowledge the passing of our colleague and friend, MP Whaanana Efeso Collins. He embodied openness, humility and strength. His life was a testament to the values of peace, love and service. He embraced that wholeheartedly every day. He was fundamental in shaping the social and cultural landscape of any space that he was in. Whaanana Efeso Collins was a central pillar in his community. Born and raised in Otara, he had humble beginnings in a religious family, the youngest of 6 children. He viewed the world as fundamentally full of grace and compassion. He understood the importance of collaboration and often referred to himself as the bridge between the Pacific Island community and the rest of New Zealand. Efeso often found himself encouraged by his community to step forward to inspire and advocate for them. From his time as a youth leader in the church all the way to Parliament, he actively inspired change and collaboration for Pacific communities and around New Zealand. He was a man of action and improvement, always making sure he took action when he saw the need. He was an advisor for the Ministry of Education for Pacifica Learning and to the Ministry of Social Development on Pacifica Youth Development. He wrote blog posts for the Daily Blog. He sometimes was found hosting segments on radio shows on Radio 531 and Radio Samoa. Something Efeso and I had in common was our love for the work that local government does, having both worked or served Auckland Council. He saw the way local government could make a difference in people's lives, and his focus always remained on serving the community. I was lucky enough to attend an event with Efeso just a few weeks before his passing. It was an event hosted by Local Government New Zealand, where members of Parliament who had either served in local government or worked for local government had an opportunity to get together out of the spotlight of politics and Parliament to share our ideas, our values and our aspirations for what local government could do for communities and New Zealanders. We shared pizza, some of us drank a beer, and we told some stories about all the things that we loved and some of the things we loathed about our time working in local government. It was a really special time and reminded me of all the good things we can do when we find ways to collaborate together in politics. When we left the event, I looked at my watch and thought, excellent, my taxi will be here in a minute. I will make it back before the end of the dinner break. I won't end up in trouble again. I said to Efeso, how are you getting back? He said, I don't know. I said, well, you better jump in with me because you're new here and you don't know how dangerous being late back to the house can be. So that gave us another opportunity to have a chat and share some of the things that were important to each other. Efeso talked about his family, how much he was missing his children and how much he looked forward to getting home at the end of the week in Wellington to spend time with them. Efeso wanted all New Zealanders to better understand the concerns and aspirations of his local community. his friends and his family, and those who supported him to be here as a Member of Parliament. What I hope is that we can work together and continue to build those bridges and to form those friendships that underpin the best work that we do as Members of Parliament. Efeso was a deeply religious man whose faith guided his life. He had the ability to listen to people's stories and connect with them in a way many politicians fall short. He had the beautiful ability to speak to his ever-changing perspectives on life as he learned. And he had spoken often about his own journey of understanding and empathy. As we mourn his passing together, I hope we can uphold his legacy by encouraging the spirit of unity and sympathy that he exemplified. May we always strive to recognise the interconnectedness of our roles and the lives of those that we serve. In honouring his memory, let us work together for a future where we feel compassion, ensuring that his impact endures in the foundation of our shared history. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Jenny Marcroft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege and an honour to take a call on behalf of New Zealand First as we pay tribute to Whaanana Efeso Collins. I'd like to begin my contribution, Mr. Speaker, by acknowledging the loss of the Green Party, the Labour Party, to his family gathered in the gallery today, but also to his two daughters. And I'm going to speak more to that in just a moment. Others in this House have spoken so eloquently today of the incredible values and the essence of this man. And so I want to do something a little bit different with my contribution. I want to talk to his daughters. And I do that with lived experience, which I'll mention at the end of my contribution. But first I'd just like to mention a couple of times, a very few brief times that I had met and had the privilege of meeting Efeso. It was back in 2022. There was a mayoral debate going on in Warkworth. It was a really horrible night. The weather was just atrocious. But Efeso made the trip up to Warkworth. And it was a very prickly crowd. He opened his mouth and he got attacked from the floor. But he carried on delivering his speech because that was politics and he was doing his job. After the debate, I felt a bit, awkward for him, so I made a point of actually going up to him and introducing myself and acknowledging him for just turning up into the area of the Warkworth region. I next came across Efeso once the election had happened, and I got transitioned into the Mayor's office as part of his transition team, and Wayne Brown was the Mayor. And one thing that Wayne would always talk about was his fondness of Efeso and how much they had become friends over the course of the election campaign. Well, it might have just been in Wayne's mind, but he certainly articulated it on a regular basis. So I just thought I'd mention that, because we used to chuckle, because a lot of the councillors would come up to the Mayor's office and they would say, well, actually, we knew Efeso and we loved him dearly. And he was definitely missed from no longer being a councillor at Auckland. Mr. Speaker, I would like to dedicate the next part of my contribution to Efeso's two daughters and also to his wife, Fia. Shockwaves happen when there is a sudden death, and those shockwaves, they ripple through the family. They ripple through a community, and they ripple across all of your tomorrows, and you don't know it until you get to tomorrow. The impact of the death, of the passing, particularly when it's really sudden, when it's someone who's young, and it just feels like you have been ripped off. For his little girls to share their deep grief in public, that adds another layer to it. So what I say to your little girls is take care of each other, keep your daddy's memories alive, keep talking to each other as you grow up, and make sure your special memories that aren't public memories, keep them alive between you, because that way you hold your father close. Now, you might be able to Google stories. There's been a lot of news stories about Efeso. That'll be great to be able to tap into as the girls are growing up, but it's those special, quiet, private family memories that really will just keep you warm as you think of your father. Every event that happens in your life, every milestone that you celebrate, whether it's a birthday or graduating school, maybe getting a degree, getting married one day, maybe the first boyfriend. Those are going to be times when you are aware that your dad is no longer with you, but you need to keep those memories alive. Grief is a little bit like a tide. Sometimes it's in full, sometimes it is ebbed. But take heart that wherever you are, your Father will be with you. Every day, for the rest of your life, you will have at least one memory every day of your dad. So hold fast onto those memories. It's natural to feel sadness, Mr. Speaker, grief and the pain of missing someone. The death of Efeso and the pain that his girls will go through will not determine their future. There is a shattering change that happens when you lose someone. We become someone different. But we transform through that pain, through that grief. And then we can live our lives from a much deeper place because of that healing that happens afterwards. Such are the lessons of grief. I'm so sorry that you have to learn this lesson. My aroha to you, you two beautiful little girls. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Call on the Honourable, I call on Rauri Waititi.
Thank you, the Prophet. Hiki nuku e, hiki rangi e. Hiki na te toki e hahau atu nei e hoi hoi atu rā I te wāotapu nui a tāne. Ko toki nui, ko toki roa, ko toki taru aitu, ko te toki nāwai, ko te toki no aitu aturaki na te pō, karongo te pō, karongo te a. Apakuratangi te wiwini, apakuratangi te wawana. Tangi koto ki o tāngata ki o huanga ko te tangi atu kura kāka. Ko mai ki nui, ko mai ki roa, ko ia huka huka. Ka taparere tū ki te moana, ka taparere tū ki a tangaroa. Tūria te ona tapu I rangi toto. Tūria te tahuna tapu I rangata tau. Tūria ki pitoria, te puna mō tea tea. Tūria ki utukina, te puna mārake rake. Ko koko mako e ko, ko koko mako e ko. Ko te hautapu kārere ki te kai ngā matariki. Ka tapareirei e ko ia tapa. Ka tapa kononua ko ia tapa. Ka tapa tukuna ki te kawatapu arangi e tū nei apapa e takotone. Whāno, harai te toki o haumi e, hui e, taiki e. Ko te wehi ki ai hoa ora ngā manu. Nāna hoki I tīkaro hia I tōna pononga. Kia tau ki tōna umapiri ai. Nō reire e te rangatira, e te hoa. Whaanana, Efeso, Collins, haere. Haere atu koe I runga I te ara kōrero ko parange e te tine e te manu. Ki o mātua ti puna, ko taka ki te pō, kia rātau kei te marae nui o te rangi e whangamaina. Whatu rā koe ki tuorei tū, ki tuorei au, ki te huinga o te kahurangi, ki te kāhui matariki. Kia rehua kai tangata. Kia autahi hupe nui. Ko koe tērā. E whakatete mai o mātua tīpuna e pohiri nei a koe. Wai ho mātau ki muri nei, e tangi nei, e haku nei, e mō tētea nei. Haere e te hoa. Ka noho au ki roto I taku reo. Te reo e kaue nei o ku mātua tīpuna I te moana nui ākiwa. Kia kaua karawa au e kuhu ki roto I te reo. E tāmi nei I a tātau I roto I ngā tauroa. Hākua kāre koutou mōhio ki tēnei reo, kai te mōhio ki te wairua e kaue nei e awa I tēnei ra. Ki tērā o tātou ki a Efeso. Me ngā hono tanga, ngā tawatawaenga kai waenga nui a tātou. Te karakia tawhito I whakatakatori ai mua I a koutou I mua I te whare I tēnei rā. Ko ngā wāhi kei roto I tērā karakia, no Hawaii ki rāno. Ngā wāhi Te reo e kawe nei o ku mātua tīpuna. E kawe nei. Mai Hawaii ki rāna. Ai, ko te moana nui a ki watera. Te Hawaii ki nui. Te Hawaii ki roa kai tu atu. Te Hawaii ki pāmamao kai tu anō atu. Anei, e mihi nei, ki ngā here, ki ngā whakapaparanga, ki ngā tawatawaenga here nei a tātou i tēnei rā. Ki a koe e whia, ki tō whānau, ki o tamāhine, nei rā te tangi e hoa. Nei rā te tangi. Hākua, ko riro, te kiko, a Efeso, ko tōna wairua. Ka kawe nei e koutou, ko tō whānau, ki roto i te whatu manawa i ngā wā katoa. Ki tōna māma, ki tōna kōkā, ka tangi hoki. I runga i te āhuatanga i tā haingia, te rā a tō tama. Koe rā kōrero, e harai te kōrero whakaparahako, engari he kōrero. Whakanui oku mātua oku tīpuna. Nā tō tama tō rā i tāhai. Noi rere e moe, e Efeso. Nei rā te iwi e tangi nei e haku nei. Hā ki te whānau ngā kākāriki. Nei rā nuhuki te mihi ki a koutou. Reipa tēnā nuki koutou. Nā manu hiri ko tai mai nei tēnei rā. Tēnā koutou. Kia ora tātou katoa.
Mr. Speaker.
Call on the Honourable Willie Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, tuatahi mi ana ki a koe te whanaunga rawiri mō tērā kōrero a tāhua me te Pāti Māori mi ana ki a koutou. Mr. Speaker, it's a privilege and an honour to speak in this debate, and I want to mihi to the whānau of Efeso. Lovely to see you all here today. And on behalf of the Māori caucus, and Labour and the Labour Party, it's just a privilege to say a few words today about my old friend, Efeso Collins. I've been listening to some of the beautiful kōrero today from all sides, Mr. Speaker, and I was thinking, how would you sum up Efeso? For me, I was thinking about three terms, and I thought proud, brave, and brilliant. So proud of his whānau, Mr. Speaker. I've never seen a man who's doing just the most magnificent speech, and then in the middle he would talk about fear and the girls and then break down in tears. He loved his whānau so much, so proud of his family and so proud of his heritage. And we heard that in his maiden speech. He spoke about how important the language was for him, speaking the reo in this house. It was wonderful to watch and wonderful to listen to. And Efeso was so brave, Mr. Speaker. He was so courageous. It's not easy to call out racism, Mr. Speaker. And Efeso called out racism all the time. All the time. And sometimes when you call out racism, you get called the racist. That was the sacrifice that Efeso made. Didn't help him a lot in terms of his political aspirations, Mr. Speaker. I remember when he came over and he talked to me about standing for the Auckland Mayoralty, and he said, Matua Willie, and I hated him calling me Matua Willie. I said, that's only Matua Shane as far as I remember. But Matua, what do you think my chances are for the Auckland Mayoralty? And I said, 0. And he says, why is that, Matua? And I says, because the races, they're not going to vote for you in Pānau. They're not going to vote for you in St. Heliers. They're not going to vote for you in Remuera. And that never deterred him at all. And that takes courage, Mr. Speaker. That takes bravery. So few people show that type of bravery and that type of courage. And brilliant, oh, was he brilliant. One of the greatest communicators of our time, of our generation. A wonderful orator. Just so good, so good. I was thinking about him and I was thinking, was there anything negative about the brother? I didn't think he was that politically savvy sometimes. Wasn't one of his great strengths. I was charged with sort of facilitating and mediating him on behalf of the Labour Party because I had to remind him, Mr. Speaker, that he was a Labour Party councillor. And sometimes, you know, he said, well, I don't get that, Matuoti. You know, what about my conscience and what if it's wrong? I said, you're a Labour Party councillor. I think we all get that. Oh, so when you're there, you vote according to the Labour lines. It didn't always translate for the brother. It didn't help him a lot in his real aspiration of being a Labour MP and Labour minister. Although we loved him, didn't we, Barb? We loved him dearly. He said to me, you know, how I've been voting, do you think it's going to help me with the list? And I said, I'm not too sure about that. But the sisters love me, he said. The sisters, Barb and Carmel and Jenny and or Pizzo. I said, they all love you. I don't know if you're going to get their vote for the list, though. But we loved him. They loved him very much. We loved him very much in the Māori caucus too. And that he didn't become a Labour MP and a Labour minister, well, we were sad about that, but we were so happy that the Greens took him on. He talked to me about joining the Greens. I said, oh, I don't know, brother. And he said, I can make it work. And he certainly did. And he certainly did. So mihi to the Greens for embracing our brother. We missed out on an incredible career. He was one for the generation, one of the greatest of the generation. Mihi to you, mihi to his whānau. We will all remember and love Efeso Collins. Kia ora tātou.
The Honourable Erica Stanford.
Mr. Speaker, to the family and friends of Efeso Collins, thank you for being here today. And on behalf of the National Party, I'm really honoured to be asked to speak. My time with Efeso Collins was, I thought it was about 30 years ago, but actually now I realise it was slightly longer. I'm older than I realised. It was at Auckland University. He was the president of the Student Association, and I was brought in on a by-election as the International Affairs Officer. Don't ask me what I did. I don't remember if I've achieved anything. But I do remember Efeso, and we stayed in touch over the years. My time with him, as I say, was so long ago, but I remember his smile. He always greeted you with a hug. I always remember and he still does, but at the time he cared deeply about his community. And he was the wonderful connector and such an incredible orator. I mean, he was born to be on stage. He was born, I think, with a microphone or a megaphone in his hand, either at a protest or behind a lectern. But the thing is, when you met him, you wouldn't know about that because he was a listener. He was always interested in what you had to say, and you felt like you were the only person in the room when you spoke to him. He was curious and interested and humble, and he'd always ask you about your family and your kids over the years. As I say, he was a gifted orator chairing those meetings at Auckland University, and I can tell you they weren't easy to chair. As you don't know, I'm not sure if you know, but student politics is much like politics in this House, possibly even a little bit more fearsome, certainly back in the 90s anyway. But he was so excellent at being a wonderful person that brought people together. He didn't just represent one community. He represented so many communities. He represented everybody at Auckland University, as well as the Māori and Pacifica students. I was so happy to see him being elected. I have to say, though, in response to Willie Jackson, I think we got played. Because actually, to get what he wanted, which was the best for his communities, I mean, I was talking to my husband, he was flicking through his texts that he often got from Efeso. I'll tell you that story shortly too. But one of the things he said was when I became elected, he goes, oh, you know, maybe I could, you know, join together with that party as well. But he did that for a reason, because he wanted certain things for his community, and he knew how to get them, and he knew how to play the game, and he knew that he needed to be really well connected into all of our parties. And indeed he was, because he cared so much about his communities and advancing things for his communities. I didn't know him well enough to know why he got into politics, but I get the feeling that in his heart he wanted a country that he was proud and excited about for his daughters to grow up in. Because For him, everything, as we've heard today, everything always came back to family. He talked to my husband regularly because my husband was the president after Efeso. They regularly talked, and Kane said to me, they would talk briefly about politics and reminisce, and then immediately Efeso would always say, "Mate, how are your kids? How's Erica doing? How's the family?" And he would talk about his own family, and he was so very, very proud. Look, and over the years, he always stayed in touch with me. It was over 30 years ago that we were at university together, and I might be the Pākehā Tory girl from the shore, and he was the liberal Samoan bloke from the south side, but he always stayed in touch. I always got texts and messages from him when something happened throughout the last 30 years, congratulating me, whether it was the birth of a child or something Kane had done, or the birth of my second child, or being elected, and we always stayed in touch. And I told this story on the AM show, but there was a bit more to it, so I didn't tell the whole story. When my husband, before he was president, he was campaigning for the president that was going to, or the person who was going to be running against Efeso Collins. So he was helping Graham Watson, for those who you remember, Auckland University. He was campaigning for Graham Watson, and Graham was running against Efeso. And my husband Kane went into the largest lecture theatre in the whole of Auckland University to tell everybody why they should vote for Graham Watson, and that was about democracy and freedom of speech. And my husband said to the audience, "What would you rather have, democracy or free speech, or what Efeso Collins is promising you, a pizza parlour on campus?" And every single person in that entire room said, "A pizza parlour on campus." And he was duly elected. But the part of the story I didn't tell on air was, like all of us student politicians, he never did get that pizza parlour on campus. But I can say that he worked with my husband and inspired my husband to run for politics the very next year. But the one thing we learned from Efeso was know your audience. Can I just finish by saying we will miss his huge smile. The fact that he got on with everybody so well. He was so loved. He will be missed by all, and I'm just so sad that we didn't get to see him fulfil his immense potential in this house.
Mr. Speaker.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora koutou katoa te arawara nunu o tō tātane atua talofa lava. Let me begin by acknowledging Fia and the whānau, Fia and the family and the friends as well. And just to say that we miss him. I miss him. We as a movement, we as a party, miss Efeso deeply and think about him every day. And I want you to know that. I want to acknowledge all the contributions around the House, acknowledging the comments made by the National Party. The next time I do have a pizza, I will be thinking about Efeso, so thank you for that contribution. And also the comments around recognising that connection between tangata whenua and tangata moana, the connection between Māori and Pasifika, that is so important for us to remember that we are in the Pacific. So thank you for those comments as well. Also acknowledging the spirit of collaboration that the ACT Party brought up as well, and how important that is in terms of the work that we need to do as parliamentarians. And New Zealand First emphasising the important role that family has and the commitment that Efeso had to his family, to his daughters as well, something for us to be mindful of as parliamentarians. To the Māori Party, tautoko katoa i ngā kōrero a mihi kua mihia. And I was thinking one of the phrases that they often say on TV is that they are unapologetically Māori. And I was just thinking, Efeso Collins was unapologetically Pasifika. That's who he was, proud to be from Otara, proud to be from the Pacific, and proud to represent his communities. To our Labour Party whānau, your grief is our grief. We grieve together. Yes, he did move next door to the whale, but let me confirm for the Labour Party it wasn't because of the gluten-free vegan pizzas and stuff like that. And I was just reflecting on the comments by the Honourable Willie Jackson, where he outlined some of the tensions that he had with the Labour Party. He would actually ring me up and he would say, "Oh, bro, I'm getting told off for being outspoken." And I said to him, "Well, come to the Greens, mate, because you get told off if you're not outspoken." So I just wanted to acknowledge that important connection as well. And when he did pass, how the humility and the speed at which you guys came together to grieve with us together. Mr. Speaker, I've known, I went to Auckland University, the greatest university in Aotearoa, New Zealand, let me say that, with Whaanana Efeso Collins, with Marama Davidson. We were young South Aucklanders going to university just a few years ago, Marama? No, it was actually over 30 years ago, and I was calculating, I think it might have been around about 1992, 1993, and then I turned to Chloe Swarbrick and I said, what year were you born? And she said 1994. So mine and Marama's friendship with Efeso Collins transcends the lifetime of Chloe Swarbrick. I have many memories, and I was just picking up with one of the comments around him being an activist, and one of my memories of Efeso is we were going down Queen Street and we were protesting about something, I can't remember, it was 30 years ago, and he was on the back of a truck with a speaker, and for some reason the truck went on to one of the sidewalks and he nearly canned over. But that was just one of the enduring memories that I have of Efeso. Mr. Speaker, he was a fellow political traveller. When I was a young person from South Auckland, there weren't that many Pacific Islanders, not that many Māori that were passionate about the sorts of politics that we were passionate about. And over the years, we would check in with each other. I'd see him on TV and he goes, oh, that was awesome what you would see. He'd see me on TV, text me and say, get a haircut and a better suit. It was, honestly, I thought he was talking to my mother sometimes, Mr. Speaker. But I have many memories and reflections of Efeso. But there were three things, I think, that stand out of Efeso for me. One of them was his wicked sense of humour. What an amazing sense of humour. Being inclusive and engaging, something that is so important. You'd have a laugh whether you agree with them or not. Next thing you know, you're having a cordial with them, and being able to actually open up and have those sorts of conversations are so important. Those are leadership materials. The other thing and the other reflection I have is his a commitment to community. His commitment to Waiata, his commitment to South Auckland, and commitment to our Pasifika communities, always steadfast. He would challenge his own. He would challenge his own if he thought it was necessary. Mr. Speaker, often people have talked about his political acumen, and we could see that in the way that he would move and connect with people as well. Let me end, Mr. Speaker, by thanking his daughters. Gabriella Asalemo, thank you for sharing your father with us. Thank you so much. His contributions will ripple through the generations. And let me end by thanking Fia. Thank you for being that force for Efeso. I remember having discussions with him when he was thinking about moving to the whale next door. And I said to him, well, you better check with Fia, bro, because if it ain't green there, it ain't going nowhere. So I want to thank you and acknowledge the family today and acknowledge all the contributions of members from around the House. Tēnā koutou, whawhatai tele lava.
As this tribute to our late colleague comes to an end, our colleague Whaana Efeso Collins, I hope his family and friends who are here today will appreciate that our collective grief is very much born from his love for you, his family, and for all those that he served. May he rest in peace. I call on Government Order of the Day, number 1.